I have some Star Trek fan fiction for you. This is Nurse Chapel. Captain's Log 2234.6. Enterprise nurse Christine Chapel is facing her first day in court related to first-degree murder charges in the death of science intern Darla Bush. Bush was found at the bottom of the turbo lift, crushed in what was first determined to be a mechanical malfunction, but was later changed to sabotage of the brake circuit. Chapel's biological signature was collected at the scene, as well as witness observations of her behavior weeks before and the day of the incident. Against the advice of counsel, Chapel requested to take the stand in her own defense and was the first to be called to the stand. She was sworn in, and the prosecutor for Starfleet approached the bench. "Did you in fact murder or cause the death of science intern Darla Bush?" the prosecutor asked. He was short, blunt, and to the point. "No, I did not," Chapel replied, firmly with conviction in her voice. "What was your relationship with the deceased, Miss Bush?" "Professional," Chapel replied flatly. "Can you elaborate?" the prosecutor asked. "I can only recall a handful of conversations in sickbay, a few in Spock's office, mostly small talk. We didn't hang out." "Would you consider her a friend?" "Acquaintance, maybe," Chapel replied. "We weren't friends." "Why did you visit Mr. Spock in his office?" "Mr. Spock and I are longtime friends." "Or were," Chapel replied. "Were?" the prosecutor asked. "What changed in your relationship with Mr. Spock?" "Spock stopped talking to me after her death." "Do you know why?" "Objection," the defense lawyer said. "She can't testify for what Mr. Spock felt after his intern's death." "Sustained," the judge said. "Did Spock ever tell you why he stopped talking to you?" "No," Chapel replied. "Was Mr. Spock a love interest of yours?" "We never dated," Chapel replied. "Did you have romantic feelings for him?" "Maybe at one point," Chapel replied. "What changed your mind?" the prosecutor asked. "It's hard to maintain a crush on a robot," Chapel stated, looking at the floor. "Did you tell Mr. Spock of your interest?" "Not in so many words," Chapel said, "but I think he knew." "I see," the prosecutor said, pacing back and forth. "Did you find Miss Bush to be a competition for Mr. Spock's affections?" "What do you mean?" "Were you jealous of Miss Bush's relationship with her supervisor, Mr. Spock?" Chapel chuckled and acted like the question was absurd. "Of course not. She was not his type." "And what type was that?" the prosecutor asked. "I can't explain," Chapel said. "They were like oil and water." "Did you, in fact, get into an argument in the mess hall with Miss Bush about Mr. Spock that led to you getting written up for your behavior?" Chapel shuffled in her seat uncomfortably. She wasn't treating him right. "All I did was give her advice, which she chose to ignore," Chapel replied. "What was the nature of the advice you gave her?" "I told her it was inappropriate for her to visit Mr. Spock in his private quarters after work, that it looked unprofessional," Chapel replied. "May I ask why that was any of your business?" Taken aback, Chapel replied, "I didn't want Mr. Spock to get in trouble because of her inappropriate behavior. You know how people talk and spread rumors." "Did you speak to Mr. Spock about your concerns?" the prosecutor asked. "No," Chapel replied. "Why not?" "I thought she would be smart enough to stop once I spoke to her. I didn't feel the need to involve Mr. Spock." "Did she indeed stop?" "No. In fact, she visited him more often than before. It was like she was trying to spite me," Chapel replied. "How would you describe your relationship with her after you had the argument in the mess hall?" "I avoided her," Chapel replied. "Is that true?" "I have several reports of vandalization of her personal property with no resolution." "Are you responsible for the destruction of her belongings?" "Objection," the defense lawyer said. "My client is not on trial for vandalism." "Sustained," the judge said. "Can you explain how your DNA was found at the scene of Miss Bush's death?" the prosecutor asked. "Yes, she picked a fight with me in the hall prior to getting in the turbo lift, and I slapped her," Chapel replied. "I never denied that." "What was the fight about?" "She called me a bitch," Chapel replied. "Don't ask me why. I didn't provoke her. We were in the hall crossing paths, and she attacked me." "Were there witnesses?" "Check the camera." It's all there, Chapel replied. The prosecutor retrieved a tablet from his desk and stepped over to the witness stand. According to Mr. Spock's deposition, you did, in fact, have more than one confrontation with the deceased concerning his relationship with Miss Bush, and he stated that, and I quote, Nurse Chapel became agitated when Miss Bush was brought up into our conversation and made many disparaging comments about how much time we spent together. Do you disagree with Mr. Spock's sworn testimony? I wouldn't say agitated, but I did tell him that people would talk, and I didn't want her dragging him through the mud, Chapel said. To your knowledge, is Mr. Spock married, or was Miss Bush? No, he's not, Chapel said. Neither was she. Then why did you think it was your place to tell him with whom to associate? She was too young for him, and I felt people would think poorly of their relationship. I was protecting Mr. Spock, Chapel replied. I didn't want to see his reputation destroyed. Are you an expert on relationships, Nurse Chapel? Is that part of your nursing scope of practice? No, I just felt it was wrong. If I did, others would as well. Had any of the other crew discussed the relationship between Mr. Spock and Miss Bush prior to the incident? The prosecutor asked. Yes, I spoke with a few close friends, Chapel replied. Not professionally? The prosecutor said flat. No, not professionally, Chapel replied. Your witness, the prosecutor said, and walked back to his table. Hey, I got lots of these things on this page. All you need to do is go back and look for them. I got them on a playlist. Ringy-dinging the bell. Follow me, follow me, follow me. I have a whole bunch of these, and I got more coming down the pipe. And I want to talk about, who do we have here today? Oh, this was kind of about Mr. Spock. I don't have a Christine Chapel doll, but I do have a Mr. Spock. So Mr. Spock's, he's a cool guy, and he wants you to ringy-dingy the bell, ding, 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 or is that ding, 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 and become a member of my group. I don't know. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching this, and stay tuned for more. I got some Star Trek fan fiction for you right here, 3 pages. This one's a little bit special. It's kind of an interesting story I've been working on, and I hope you enjoy it. Captain's Log 2234.5. The Enterprise is responding to an emergency beacon from what was then known as the Science Survey Ship Expedition, which was reported lost a century ago. The ship was last monitored on its way to a distant M-class planet, Ramesses, tasked with investigating markings on the planet's surface, but never heard from again. The distance at the time of the disappearance made it impossible for Starfleet to travel, but with time, Starfleet has now sent the Enterprise to examine the beacon. Captain Kirk was summoned to the bridge when an alien signal reached them from the planet's surface below. Uhura said there was an image, and Kirk told her to put the video on the main view screen. On the screen was a humanoid, dressed in the garb of an Egyptian pharaoh, and in the back were several huge pyramids under construction with various spacecraft lifting and placing huge rectangle blocks. Captain, the alien said, in English. His accent was Earth Middle Eastern, but unidentifiable. I am Dr. Tali Zawasi, the Minister of State for Antiquities, Affairs, and Chief Archaeologist. We detected your ship as you approached, and I'm warning you to veer off immediately. Kirk recognized the face of Dr. Zawasi from history and his studies at Starfleet of ancient civilizations. The man on the screen could not be who he said he was, as the man he studied was long dead. How can you be Dr. Zawasi? Kirk asked. You lived on Earth centuries ago. I am the same man you studied in your history books, an alien that has traveled the galaxy for thousands of years, the doctor replied. I currently reside here, on the planet you call Ramesses. Fitting, isn't it? Spock stepped down to stand next to Kirk. Fascinating, Spock said, raising an eyebrow. There were theories that aliens visited Earth and constructed the pyramids, a theory that was allegedly proven false. You are correct, Dr. Zawasi replied. You are an alien as well, as I can see. What is your name? My name is Spock, and my captain's name is Kirk, Spock replied. I was there on Earth when the theory of alien involvement was proposed, and I was shocked at how easily your kind was persuaded that mere Earthlings could construct such a monument so easily with copper tools, rope, and the strength of apes. There were many that felt there were outside involvement, Kirk replied, but there were also many that felt we shouldn't discount the ability of man. In any case, you can't stop here. We don't want or need you, Zawasi said, waving his hand off, shooing off the captain. We are responding to a distress call from one of our ships, Kirk replied. It is our duty to investigate and assist if needed. I know of your ship and of the distress call. That was long, long ago, and things have changed significantly since then. Your men are dead and gone and no longer need you, Zawasi stated as fact. That may be true, but our responsibility will be to gather the remains for family and recover as much of the ship as possible, Kirk said. We are far too busy with construction to allow you to gather the dust that remains, Zawasi said. There is nothing left for you. Kirk looked in the background of the screen and watched huge spacecraft lift the stones into the air and set them in place on the newly constructed pyramid. Hundreds of workers surrounded the structure, but Kirk could not tell what they were doing. Why was there no evidence of alien involvement in the construction of the Earth pyramids? There must have been accidents. Where were your ships hidden? Kirk asked. Annoyed, Zawasi replied to Kirk's inquiry. If you keep looking, you will find them. We buried many ships under your shifting sands. When your technology improves, they will show themselves like fireflies in the dark forest. But, Kirk added, no more questions, Zawasi snapped back. I have work to do, and you need to change course immediately. Starfleet wants answers, and I plan to investigate. You have your work, and I have mine. I told you what happened to your ship and to your crew. Tell your Starfleet, as I told you, Zawasi replied, shaking his head. You wouldn't accept that answer, and neither will they. We will continue to Ramesses as planned, and we will investigate, Kirk snapped. Kirk and Spock were immediately zapped off the bridge of the Enterprise and transported to Zawasi's construction center. Both men felt the heat of the sun-drenched sand-laden planet and felt the grit in the air. See with your own eyes, Zawasi said, holding out his arms to both sides. Do you see your ship? Do you see your men? Kirk shielded his eyes with his hand and slowly spun around. No, I don't, Kirk said. I will need to scan the planet with my ship. I may need to bring down a crew to take a closer look and take samples. This is your one opportunity, Zawasi said. Use it wisely. Spock spoke up. How many ships do you employ to move the blocks into place? We have hundreds of ships cutting, moving, and placing blocks, Zawasi replied, operating in shifts all hours of the day. At that rate, how long do you anticipate construction to last? We can place 3 pyramids in 5 Earth years, Zawasi replied. We have constructed thousands of these in the galaxy, over 50 in the solar system alone. Why did you only construct 3 in the Earth solar system? Why only 3 on Earth? Spock asked. What makes you think we only constructed 3? We constructed a dozen on Vulcan alone, Zawasi stated with pride. Okay, this video has to do with ancient aliens, and I thought it'd be a really cool story if, we found another planet where they actually did build pyramids with aliens, and that Dr. Zawasi here was just an alien that went from place to place. I thought it was kind of a unique story. I don't think I've ever heard of it before. So to me, this is one of my more special stories, and I hope this goes somewhere. Today's story has a very, very small role by Mr. Scott. But I wanted to bring him out because he doesn't get much action on my screens here. So I have a new story for you. It's about some Romulans, and here goes. Captain's log, supplemental. Kirk and the bridge crew picked themselves up off the floor after a torpedo strike sent them flying off their chairs and over the railing. The origin of the blast was now evident, as a Romulan bird of prey was now on the main bridge screen. Then the image on the screen changed to that of the captain of the alien craft, who was strangely familiar yet unworldly. It was Albert Einstein, with Romulan ears and eyebrows. "Surrender, Captain Kirk, or die," Captain Einstein said in a low, menacing German-English tone. Scotty spoke up. "We can't take much more of this. Our shields are down 50%. "All shields forward," Kirk barked. "There's another bird of prey directly behind us," Sulu said, looking at his monitor. Kirk took a deep breath and tried to formulate a plan. First, he needed to know why Albert Einstein was on his screen resembling a Romulan captain. "Who are you?" Kirk asked, delaying another strike. "You don't recognize me?" Einstein asked. "In my own time, I was very well known. You don't study history?" "I know who you look like," Kirk replied, "but the Einstein of my past did not have Romulan ears or brows. Your eyes give you away, as well as your hair, which begs the question, why do you want me to surrender?" "You have crossed into the neutral zone and have committed an act of war," Einstein replied with a scowl. Spock spoke up and said, "We have not crossed into the neutral zone. We aren't within 5 light years of the border. I believe you are mistaken." "A Vulcan?" Einstein asked, knowing the answer. "Don't let your logic get in the way. We've moved the border." "The treaty shows otherwise," Spock replied. "I have no new information that the treaty has been modified." "I'm telling you now," Einstein said with a grin and a twinkle in his eye. "Now surrender or die." Kirk stepped closer to the view screen and said, "We need to contact Starfleet and confirm what you are saying. If we have indeed trespassed into Romulan territory, we apologize. But until we receive confirmation, we will not surrender." Captain Einstein turned to the Romulan off-screen and spoke. The sound was muted, but Spock was able to read lips and understand the conversation. Einstein turned back to the screen and said, "You and the Vulcan, transport to my ship, and I will delay your destruction." "Depends on how our meeting goes," Einstein stated in a dismissive tone. "I make no guarantees." "And my crew?" Spock replied, "He intends on killing the crew. I read his lips, and the computer will confirm what I say." Kirk asked the computer to interpret the muted conversation between Captain Einstein and his off-screen crew member. The computer read back the conversation and confirmed Spock's analysis. Kirk knew the Romulan ship's shields were too strong for a photon torpedo barrage or laser attack, and his back was against the wall. "Before we go any further," Kirk said, "can you explain how a hybrid Professor Einstein Romulan captain appears on my screen in the first place?" "The report of my death was greatly exaggerated," Einstein replied. "My Romulan family extracted me from Earth, modified me, and extended my life by many factors. Now lower your shields so we can transport." "If I lower my shields, you will destroy us," Kirk replied. "We will destroy you either way." "Maybe, but I won't let you fool me into committing suicide," Kirk snapped back. "How are the shields, Scotty?" Kirk asked aloud. 100%, Scotty replied, trying to hide a lie. He had around 80% and knew it would take a few hours to get back to full strength. Captain Einstein looked off screen for a moment and went back to Kirk. "Your engineer is a poor liar," Einstein said flatly, "but you do have enough to keep us at bay." "Stalemate," Kirk said. "Yes. For now," Einstein said. "I will soon find a way to destroy you." "Why are you so determined to destroy us in the first place? We are well within our space, and you are committing an act of war. Starfleet will be notified of your attack soon, and you won't be able to hide. Your cloaking device will not help you if you destroy us." In a flash, Kirk, Spock, and Scotty transported to the surface of an unknown alien planet, along with Einstein and 2 of his crew. The air was cool, yet the sun was high overhead inside what resembled a Roman Colosseum. "What did you do?" Einstein asked. "Where are we?" "I have no idea," Kirk replied as he scanned the rows of empty seats. A figure resolved between the Starship crew and the Romulans, tall, thin, with a regal appearance, holding his hands open to appear non-threatening. "You are not in danger." As of now, the being conveyed, without a mouth. The sound filled the air, but there was no origin. "If you attempt to leave or attack, your lives will end. Stay calm as we explain why you have been brought here. Telling someone to stay calm never works, Scotty snapped. Listen to them, Spock said as calmly as he could. He holds all the cards, as your proverb states. I'd take him in a game of poker any day, Scotty snapped back. I'm pretty good if you ask me. As am I, Einstein replied. I am a certified genius. That is my entire story. I hope you enjoyed it. I think Scotty enjoyed it. He had a few lines here and there. If you like what I do, subscribe. I have about a half a dozen of these now. I'm going to make a bunch more. I'm not going to hire a bunch of actors and build a set. All I'm going to do is write my stories and read them to you. I hope that's good enough because that's all I can do. I can't afford to go out and do anything more. So please like, ring the bell, subscribe, and do all that fun stuff. And thanks for listening.